Well, upon taking over from Ben Rutten as Essendon coach, Brad Scott said the club's future success would boil down to hard work, discipline and unity. His first public appearance in red and black took place at the Bombers' Best and Fairest in September of last year, and he had this blunt message for his players.
But I talked about the opportunity we've got and that we don't have any time to waste. So the condition that the players come back day one of pre-season will tell a story in and of itself.
Jake Stringer didn't heed the warning. We shouldn't be surprised. He doesn't often. I was taken aback when photos emerged of Stringer presenting for day one of that pre-season. And by elite athlete standards, he was overweight, again. And now he's injured, and his pre-season has been interrupted, again. In 10 seasons, Stringer has played 20 or more games 3 times, and he'll probably fail to reach that mark again this year. As his Essendon teammates completed match simulation at training today, Stringer watched on. In a 2021 interview for Fox Footy, Stringer admitted that he was out of shape during the previous season. I've leaned down a bit, about 7 kilos. I must have been carrying a few last year, but it's all part of the development and growing. Stringer was 26 when he made those comments. He's now 28, and the time for development and growth is long gone. Staggeringly, he revealed this on a podcast in 2022 in which he proudly described his more disciplined off-season, which led to a career-best 2021.
Pound the pavement, teach yourself how to run long distance and learn how to be able to do that. Because before that, I probably hadn't ran over 2K straight probably in 8 years. You go for a run and you do a K warm-up and then we'll do 200s, 300s, 400s. We're not going to do just a 5K jog. Well, I wasn't.
Hadn't run over 2Ks in 8 years. Now, motivated by being out of contract, he did get fit and he produced an outstanding season. The Bombers rewarded him with a multi-year contract extension. But now we're back to square one. Overweight, injured and watching on. This week, South African cricketer Danae van Niekerk was controversially omitted from the T20 World Cup for failing to reach a 2K time trial target. Essendon needs to follow suit. Until Stringer achieves strict fitness and body measurement goals, Scott should not pick him in the senior team. Now, Scott was diplomatic when asked about his fitness yesterday on Channel 7.
So he played sore a lot last year, so our priority has been to strip things back for Jake and build up his strength in all the right areas so that he can get back to full power and full strength. Our philosophy's been if that sets him back a little bit in terms of his conditioning for round one and the early rounds, then we'll live with that.
In Scott's words, Essendon requires hard work, discipline and unity to achieve success. Unfortunately, his most talented player has shown none of the three. 1300 736 736. Would you support the Bombers doing a South Africa and placing strict fitness guidelines on Jake Stringer before they pick him? Gerard, harsh or fair?
I think you've got to take on board what Brad Scott has said, and that is that he's prepared to take some short-term pain for hopefully some longer-term gain. But I've worked with a lot of players over the years, young players, old players, mid-tier players, Brownlow medalists, and my starting point has always been fitness. I've rarely come across a player that can't get fitter. And if you asked me to work with Jake Stringer, where would I start? I'd focus absolutely on fitness. And I thought his commentary gave us an insight as to why you do that. Get out and pound the pavement. Learn how to run long distance. I found that when you learn how to run long distance, when you sort of got to that stage where you're dry reaching and you can still find a way to keep going, it just gave you the discipline and the mental strength to enable you to get the best out of yourself. And it made things a lot easier when you're playing because you've pushed yourself. Now, you've gone through similar things and you've taken it to an extraordinary level with your long distance running, but there's very few players out there that when you analyse their best ever year, it doesn't come back to a high degree or a higher intensity of pre-season training and fitness. And I feel, I don't know what goes on at footy clubs these days, but I know they deal a lot more in short distance running, but I still see very, very high-end Brownlow medalists, best and fairest winners that live in the Bayside area. I see them doing the long Ks along the cliffs, probably secretly on a regular basis.
Unfortunately, it's probably too late for Jake. So that's the frustrating thing, and he'll be what he has been for the last 10 years. That'll be a frustrating player who wins 3 or 4 games off his own boot and then gets injured and comes back in and Whether Essendon tolerate that, I'm not sure. It sounds like Brad Scott may take a harder line. But for the next Jake Stringer, learn the lesson of those before you. And so there's a couple of great examples. Darcy Fogarty last year got fitter. I saw him in pre-season, visibly fit. Six-pack, he covers the ground much freer than what he had in his first 3 or 4 seasons. Taylor Walker spoke about it. As much as I've had my beef with Taylor Walker, his turnaround in form coincided with him being extraordinarily fit. You know, go and speak to anyone who has a career year, and the first thing they usually say is, I got fitter. Like Tyson Stengel. Watch him cover the ground. How much fitter was he at Geelong than he was at Adelaide? How much more disciplined was he with his lifestyle than at Adelaide? And he's an All-Australian premiership player and a star of the game. Now, this is why I have zero, I don't
tolerance.
give them any, no tolerance. Maybe 1 or 2, 3, 4 years. I think Christian Petrarca, the penny might have dropped at year 4. Max Gawn, the penny might have dropped at year 5. But at some point in your early 20s, if the penny doesn't drop, you're not going to be the player that you could be. And Jake Stringer will look back with all that wasted talent and think about perhaps in 10 years, what if? That's what he was
I'll tell you who got themselves much better, much more fit last year. He won the Brownlow medal the year before. But Lachie Neale was significantly fitter last year than he was in his Brownlow medal winning year. And he had every right to tail off and maybe not train as hard, but he wanted to take the level to an even higher level. And his running was extraordinary last year. I mean, ultimately, if you can't run, you can't play to a degree in this game. Much more so than in cricket, as we found out. But it's the easiest way to get better as a player, and that's just to get fitter.
Yep, all the great ones, Crawford, Harvey, Judd, they all ran themselves into the ground. And as much as sports science has advanced, it's an aerobic game still, and the better runners get a lot of the footy. Barry's on the line. What do you think on Jake Stringer, Baz?
Kane, you're exactly right. If you watch Jake Stringer play, he's, as John Ralph said years ago, he's the package. He can do everything. But if you also watch closely, he can do it for very short periods, and that's not acceptable in the AFL. It might be acceptable in the NFL or other games where you can sprint and stop, blah, 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 get replaced. But Jake Stringer, great player, but what's happening now is we've got a coach called Scott, who is not going to tolerate this stuff, as against a coach called Rutten, who did tolerate it. So I see an upside for Essendon with Scott taking the reins. And I think Jake, if he's worth his salt, will step up and deliver what he can deliver.
And he can do it in the pool, and you can do it on a rowing machine, and you can do it all.
They have these machines, Jared. Now it's called like a deloaded treadmill.
Yeah,
you put yourself in a harness, and it takes your body weight up, so you don't get the pounding of you would running because your body weight is reduced, but you still get the aerobic capability. Every AFL club would have one. They use it to recover from leg injuries. This is why I got no sympathy. Get on the bike, get on the unloaded treadmill, the zero gravity treadmill, whatever they're called, and get in the pool and eat better. Jake would be my message. Rocco, you got a thought on it?
Yeah, good evening, boys. How are we?
Good.
Good to hear. I can't understand how we're in the year 2023 and players' jobs are to get paid so much money to be physical beasts and condition themselves to be primed for elite sport, and we're still giving them chances. If you work in a normal job and you don't live up to the level of expectation with your employment and your job, you get sacked. And these guys are getting paid a lot of money to be fit, be healthy, be strong. They've got every facility available, and he still can't live up to it.
Strong thoughts there. And I mean, it is a more politically correct world, and there will be people that have a crack at me for body shaming someone. I don't care. You can call me a body shamer if you want. I don't care, because it's different to a normal person in society when you're a professional athlete and your job revolves around your body being in the best shape that it can possibly be. So come as hard as you want for me on that one, and I will continue to defend that. Jared, joining us now is Michael Gleeson from The Age. He's written a couple of excellent columns in recent weeks, so we thought we'd get him on to chat some footy and other matters. Mick, thanks for your time.
Thanks very much for having me.
Gerard touched tonight on the legacy that Tony Cochrane will leave. He's standing down as chairman of the Gold Coast Suns today, officially. What's your reflections of his impact on the Suns and the AFL more broadly?
Oh, he's sort of the mouse who roared, isn't he? Like, he's the fella who's come in from the north, and he gave them a voice. Whether people liked the screaming and liked the voice itself, he gave them a voice when they didn't have anything. I mean, for some people, he added to the idea of it being a bit of a circus of a club, which it was for a long time. But he at least gave them some, a voice at the table, a seat at the table, and a voice at the table. And he fought back against some of those that would, say, well, you should be in Tasmania, you should be there, you should be, move them off. It's like, hang on. He put the case of the Gold Coast when few others were. And, I think his legacy will be that in the last few years, to me, they feel like they've straightened the place out with the appointments that they've made. They've got some stability there, good people involved from, Mark Evans, Craig Cameron, Wayne Campbell and Stewie Dew. So they've got that. They're re-signing players now. Players are wanting to stay. So that's the situation of the Gold Coast now, which is a world away to what it was.
I reckon the Isaac Rankin one really hurt him personally, given how much they'd nurtured him and given that there were no signs of him going up until the last moment.
No, that's right. And I think that they felt confident that he would, but he got his head turned by money, and that's okay. I mean, he's trying to look after himself, and that happens at every club. Players leave, and move interstate, move home again. All the time. I think the more important thing for them is not Isaac Rankin. It's Ben King, it's Matty Rowell, and it's Noah Anderson. So they're the ones that have really become, the backbone and the heart of the team, and they're all signing on and wanting to stay. So, yeah, Rankin hurts them. I was just a little mystified by the amount Adelaide threw to a player that feels a bit like a cream player than a player you bring in at that point in their development, but you get them when you can, I suppose.
What do we know of Bob East, the chairman-elect?
Not a whole lot. I was hoping you could tell me. He's look. I don't suspect that he's going to be like Tony Cochrane, but he'll he'll have learnt from Tony that you do have to be prepared to speak to get some traction and push your case to the AFL. But look, we'll be waiting to speak to him in more detail. I haven't, his name was completely new to me today after Jake broke the story this morning. So, no, I'll quiz Jake and I'll be trying to get onto him myself.
Get back to us on that one. I thought it was a really interesting story in The Age yesterday from yourself about the St Kilda recruiting strategy to target players that are upcoming from the Bayside area, but also players from other clubs, and using that stretch as a recruiting advantage, not dissimilar or very similar to what Geelong have done. Is it realistic? Does it have the same advantages of Geelong, and is it a sound strategy, do you think?
Oh, it's a sound strategy. It doesn't have the same advantages as Geelong because you've got, you're not as remote. You're not capturing a whole Western District or Surf Coast, but you have got the advantage of being further out from Melbourne than other clubs. Melbourne would say as their Casey training base, but this is the heart of the club right there. They've got the Sandy Dragons there at the moment. So they're trying to foster that relationship too, that they don't just say, they turn up and play and train here and we don't have anything to do with it. They're trying to develop that relationship with them, that the kids feel predisposed towards St Kilda, that they feel like they can come, that there is a reconnection to them if they come home again. And that's true with the Sandy Zebras as well. So they're trying to position themselves in that way as being the team of the Southern Belt, which, look, that's basically where their supporters are. They're one of the clubs that is really limited in how spread their fan base is. They are all through that Southern Belt. So they're just trying to target that. And it's not it's not the total strategy, but it is something that they're thinking, well, it's an area we've probably neglected over time, and it's something we need to pay some attention to. Look, the fact is Geelong's also got the advantage of the fact that they are a successful and very, very well-run club, and on that basis alone are an enviable place to be. So St Kilda's, they've repositioned themselves in a lot of areas. They've got Ross Lumbeck. They're trying to get the success back on the field and be a place that they can get these kids. So, it just means that you keep monitoring, as the Adelaide clubs do, as the Perth clubs do. They monitor the kids from the local area when they go away, and they keep a tab on them. They keep chipping away at the managers and keep chipping away, trying to get them to persuade them to come back to them again. I suppose St Kilda's trying to say, well, as opposed to the rest of the Victorian clubs, the Melbourne clubs, you've got Carlton, Essendon, North Melbourne, all on top of one another in the same area. You go to one, you may as well go to any of them. This is a point of difference that they have, which is down there. So, maybe when Hawthorn moves to Dingley, they'll have a bit of competition, but they've got, they're aiming to make that their edge, to say, well, if you're a kid who's grown up in Frankston, coming back to Melbourne is one thing. If you're going to be recruited to the Bulldogs or North Melbourne, and you're an hour away from home, so they're trying to make that a bit of a point of difference. So you've got guys like Finn. There were 3 in the top 10 2 years ago. Finn Callahan and obviously and Josh Sin among them, and Chesser in Perth. But they're the sorts of players that they'll look at. I'm not saying any of those 3 are necessarily going, but they're the types of players that you'll be continuing to monitor.
It was an interesting draft, that one. I sort of made the point at the time that Port Adelaide, they moved up a spot to get Josh Sin, who was the Sandy Dragons captain at the time. St Kilda had the option to go with him, but they went for Wanganeen Miller, who's going to be a terrific player, and it looks as if he's going to go to half-back. But you just wonder whether or not... I mean, I don't know enough about Josh Sin, haven't seen him, and clearly they rated Wanganeen Miller higher. But under this current regime and this current philosophy, do you think they would have gone the other way? One was picked directly after the other.
They'll still say go for the best available with the best picks, like that, as all clubs will. But maybe they'll have a greater look at a kid like that. I know Josh was from down the road. He played as Brighton Vampires for a bit as well, and he would be a fit for there. He's a great kid. Could play down. He'd be one that they look at. I suppose they were looking at need, but you're right. Maybe it is one that if you're thinking that way, why don't you keep the local kid, foster those local connections that you would do? It would sway you. Depends how much gap they thought was between the two.
I think the kicking of Wanganeen Miller was the thing that swayed me, which I haven't seen enough of Josh Sin. Kane, you would have seen him. How's he tracking? Because I know he's had some injuries over the last year or two. Yeah,
I think they've wanted him to work harder, to be honest. I think he's hasn't quite fully adapted to being a full-time professional AFL player, but has made some strides. It's injury niggles, but nothing serious. There's a spot for him on the wing with Carl Amon leaving. He's got electric speed, as you know very well, Gerard. So he'll get an opportunity in the pre-season, and then I guess it's up to him. I was really strong, Mick, on Jake Stringer and the condition that he's presented himself in again just moments ago. He's letting his teammates down, I think, and I've got no leeway for AFL footballers. Their job is to turn up fit, and he hasn't again at the age of 28. Am I being too harsh on Jake?
No, in the broad sense of he's an AFL footballer and has to do it. Probably yes, in as much as, well, that's what he is. And we've known it, and that's what you put up with, and that's what you cop.
So how long do you put up with it? Like if you're Brad Scott, and I played his audio.
Goals, you don't.
Yeah, well, I played his audio at the best and fairest, and his one message taking over was, I'm going to judge you how you turn up day one of pre-season. And day one of pre-season, Jake Stringer turned up overweight, and I'll call it out for what it is. He's 28 now. He's had, he's a tease. And when he's playing for a contract, he had a very good season, and now he's injured again and watching on. So at what point do they make a stand with him and not play him until he does reach those fitness goals?
Well, there's every chance that that statement's being made by the new coach. There's, it's no coincidence become available. It's become apparent that this is what's happened, and maybe they are making that stand right now. And Brad say, no, you can tease all you like. We don't want teasers. We want someone who's going to turn up in the condition, be professional, week in, week out, and play honest footy, and set that standard. Look, this is just, as I say, it's not the first time Jake's turned up overweight. So are they? Is this the final story? Is this the moment? The thing is, the older you get, the less you can afford to do that too.
Well, it's harder, yeah.
How easily can he shed it? How easily can he get himself fit? And how much of an impact does that sort of fluctuation in fitness have when you get older and you start to do more soft tissue and other injuries.
He wouldn't get a game for the South African T20 side, I know that. Sorry about being harsh. Kane's harsh on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, he's, it's, what do you say about him? He players like that don't seem to want to learn.
I do compare him to Christian Petrarca, who turned up with washboard abs day one of pre-season. And he didn't initially get it, Christian Petrarca. He's spoken about how he transformed his body and how he became a professional. And then I compare a player with similar talent. I don't think there's much separating them both in the position they play and their talent, but it means more to one than the other. Who are you hot on? Mick? We spoke yesterday. Gerard and I are a bit reluctant to do any pre-season predictions because it's impossible. It seems so even. Have you got one team that you're particularly hot on in the lead up to the season?
Oh, there's a couple of teams I really like Brisbane and what they did in the off-season. I think McStay and Gunston improves. He's a better player. I think Ashcroft will come in and have an immediate sort of, he'll be a man at the level straight away, and Dunkley as well adds to them. So I like that. I don't like him behind the ball, so that's a bit, they're troubled behind there. There's the Geelong. Gerard, I saw you. I saw Dwayne as well saying about last week. We were down at Geelong last week,
yep.
Wow, they were impressive.
They're getting better.
And Ollie Henry was really, really something. Paddy Dangerfield was just for this time of year just looking mint, and you thought, I can't see where they're going to go backwards. And so look, they're the ones. I've been big on Carlton because I look at their list and think they just should be playing finals footy. But we thought that last year. And their list, you actually say not just finals footy, they should be a top 4 team. Zach Williams really hurts him. I really like the idea of Markov, but I don't know whether we're just jumping from players we know and maybe they feel like they've got enough there. But, I really like that. He's got that pace, and that's the query on Carlton, is that leg speed through the middle. And they rely, therefore, on your Zach Williams and Saad and that off half-back to give them that run and drive. So, it'd be interesting to see what they do there.
You made you wrote a very interesting column, good column, about behaviour versus ability in and around the Taron Thomas issue. How do you see that playing out, the Thomas, or is it all dependent on the court case?
No, I don't think it will be. I'm not from, the court case is one thing. I suspect that I've heard that there's been more women come forward since the stories have broken as well. I think that it's one where they were slow to take the right decision for them, not only for Taron, but for themselves and for the rest of the culture to say, he's got to step away from the club. What does it signal? Put aside criminality. Not everything should be judged on a level of criminality of behaviour. And, if we're just going to say if it's not criminal, it's okay. Well, that's a pretty high bar for a player to have to reach to be punished. I just think that the behaviour of itself and the pattern of behaviours that were mimicked that were repeated is deeply troubling. Now, I don't know how long you step away for. I think my view would be you isolate for a period from the rest of the group, you welcome back in, and then you don't play for a period. Because it's not just him you're sending a message to, it's the other players, male and female. It's the male and female supporters and members and staff members that have to see what your view is of that sort of behaviour. And I don't think it's going to happen quickly. But I felt terribly sorry for North as well at the time. They were going to announce on the day that this broke that Sonia Hood had been diagnosed with breast cancer, was going in for surgery. Well, that felt like it would have been opportunist and to try and deflect people with putting that news out, and so shelved it for a few days for that reason. And so they're really, it's a difficult time for the club all round. And interestingly, the club now, they've got Sonia. They've also have appointed a female president, a female CEO as well. So it's really interesting. And then you've got Clarko coming in he's probably learning something as well, where his natural inclination, Clarko, would be to fix it. But the whole Hawthorn experience is, mate, just we'll worry about this, and you worry about the rest of the team and the coaching. So, look, I'm not sure how quickly it'll be resolved, but I think that they've reached the point that they needed to get to. And, their first instinct was to throw their arms around him, and it took them a bit to realise, well, yeah, you've got to do that, but you've also got to give him a bit of a whack too. So this is the point they had to get to. Now, how quickly they get to the next stage will be seen.
Mick, couldn't agree more. Fascinating insights. We could chat for longer, but we're out of time. We appreciate you joining us on Sports Day once again, and we'll speak to you throughout the year, hopefully.